Hey everyone, I'm Josh, and in this video I want to discuss fragile masculinity and the impact that it's having on Western countries. This is actually a pretty fascinating topic psychologically because it explains a lot of the things that young men are going through, and it also can even partially explain a lot of the chaos that you're seeing in many Western countries nowadays. So without further ado, I'll dive into this interesting subject, and of course that starts with defining what the heck fragile masculinity is. So it's essentially the anxiety or the insecurity that men feel because of their masculinity and how it's perceived. You know, it's that whole concept of performative masculinity where men feel like they have to do certain things or act in certain ways in order to be perceived as masculine, and often they won't even necessarily believe in whatever they're doing. They just do it because they know that it means that other people will view them as masculine. A funny example of this from my own life was something that happened to me back in middle school where some kid made fun of me. I don't remember what he said. He basically insulted me, and I didn't have a reaction to it because I just didn't care what this kid thought of me, which is probably the proper response. But all the guys around me were basically doing that nonsense like, "Ooh, oh my God, are you gonna take that, Josh? You're just gonna let this kid insult you?" And that right there is basically a sign of this performative masculinity where I essentially was kind of put in a corner. Either I have no reaction, which ideally is the proper response, or I engage in performative masculinity and act like he offended me and say something back that they perceive to be better, like a witty comeback. I didn't do that because I didn't care, but that's essentially what this whole concept is, where you feel like you have to behave in certain ways, even if you don't believe in it, because I didn't believe in acting offended over this kid. I just didn't care what he thought of me. But to the other people around me, I would have been perceived as more masculine, as better than this other kid if I'd actually had a response that was better than his initial insult. So there's a good example of how this performative masculinity can play out for guys, even while growing up. But obviously this concept transcends childhood and impacts us tremendously as adults, especially even as young adults, because right now a lot of young men are feeling kind of lost because of this whole weirdness surrounding masculinity. It's like masculinity isn't very well defined by society. So a lot of young men don't even really know what they need to do to be masculine. I mean, there are some clues, right? Like society likes to say, oh, you need to be physically strong, you need to be confident, you maybe even need to have a six-figure job and have a beautiful girlfriend or wife or a house and a family and be a good provider. Like there are certain roles that are defined to be masculine, but there are also many ways in which it's not super clear-cut what masculinity is. And because of that ambiguity, a lot of young men are feeling a bit lost. And also there's a whole separate problem of there not being a lot of good masculine role models anymore in entertainment media and in society in general, and especially from like the top when it comes to positions of power like politicians. There really aren't many good examples in recent decades of truly masculine world leaders, right? Especially I'm talking about the perspective of like the US. Yeah, we haven't had good masculine role models for quite some time. And no, Trump does not count for anyone who thinks that. I'll dive into why. That's another indication of this problem and how it's kind of playing out in the world. So because of the fact that masculinity isn't very well defined, a lot of young men have all these insecurities, all this anxiety that they feel related to their masculinity. In fact, I know there are a lot of men out there who even feel unattractive. They feel unwanted by women, and that has a huge impact on them. Like the insecurities that that feeling creates are stuff that are very difficult to deal with. I mean, I know because I used to feel that way myself. It was more so in like late high school, early junior college where I was feeling that way, and part of it was because I didn't even know how to relate to women, so that didn't help. But later on I learned and things got a lot better and I don't feel that way anymore. But a lot of young men are in that same boat that I was, and they don't know how to get out of it because again, we don't have these good masculine role models. A lot of young men's parents don't really help them in that regard. Their fathers may not even know what kind of stuff we're dealing with nowadays, so they don't know how to speak to that. And yeah, so it's creating a lot of vulnerable men who don't know how to deal with that vulnerability. And usually because, again, society kind of dictates that vulnerability is this thing that men should not feel at all, they're not opening up to their peers about it, to their friends. to other guys. They're not talking about the way they're feeling, so they have all this pent-up frustration and anger that ends up playing out in a bunch of different insecurities and, again, that anxiety. So essentially, young men are in this really bad place, and it makes them vulnerable to manipulation and to grifters. So you can see that playing out nowadays. I mean, just look at the US. Going back to what I mentioned earlier about Trump, he swooped in and pretended to be this masculine role model, but you can make a good argument there isn't really an ounce of masculinity in him, at least not the healthy kind. What he's showing to the world is more something you could call hyper-masculinity. But that's not true healthy masculinity. Hypermasculinity is like this overcompensation for what they believe would be masculine. So it's Trump acting in such a way that he believes a bunch of young men will look at him and say, that's a masculine leader, because it fits certain societal definitions of what it is to be masculine that don't really make much sense, like being the loudest person in the room. That doesn't mean you're the most masculine person. It just means you're the most insecure because you want everyone to look at you. You want to be the center of attention. Or it even means like when they go on power trips and they want to be or appear like the most powerful person in the room. Again, that doesn't necessarily mean that they're the most masculine person in the room. It could also just mean their insecurities are being displayed for everyone to see, and they're trying to act like they have a bunch of power. So do you kind of get what I mean here? Like, hypermasculinity is a symptom of fragile masculinity. It's a symptom of that insecurity. It's not true masculinity, at least not the healthy kind. It's this more like kind of playing at having masculinity, like they're acting, but it isn't actually legit. And there are many examples of men out there currently who are doing this. Trump being one of the best examples because he's making a fool of himself on the world stage. To anyone who has a good amount of social savviness, they see right through his fake masculinity and see him for the insecure man that he is. Then you have grifters like Andrew Tate, who obviously is trying to live up to certain perceptions of masculinity, again, by like showing off rich cars and showing off these beautiful women with him and hyping up his boxing skills and that kind of thing. So it's all these things that are kind of external to him and not so much about who he is at the core and his character, which turns out to be pretty insecure because he got completely destroyed by Greta Thunberg on Twitter, and it was rather ironic and sad. So there you go. A lot of these guys, they aren't really truly masculine, at least not healthy masculine. They're just feigning this hyper masculinity to basically trick young men into believing that they actually are good masculine role models. And funny enough, nowadays you even have broligarchs trying to do this as well, like Elon Musk, Zuckerberg, Bezos. They've all kind of been rebranding themselves in recent times to appear more masculine because they also are trying to appeal to young men. They're trying to get favor from young men so they can manipulate them and enrich themselves. And yeah, that's basically what a lot of these guys do, right? They're using this hyper masculinity as a way to basically extract money from young men who are vulnerable, and it's messed up. But a real quick side note to verify what I was saying about the broligarchs, just look at how Zuckerberg changed his hairstyle, how he's now doing MMA. He even kind of changed the way he talks, which is really interesting when you look into that. And now he's wearing like a bunch of like gold chains and other stuff. So he's trying to come off more masculine. And then Elon Musk, of course, is like trying to get into gaming because a lot of young men love that activity, and it's a way to kind of reach out to them and connect with them. And then he's wearing shades all the time, and like he's got that chainsaw that he was using in public. So he's also trying to come off more masculine and appeal to young men. And then Bezos, he had eye surgery to fix his eye, so now it doesn't look the way it used to. And he also is like one of the buffest oligarchs. So there you go, yet again trying to appeal to young men and be this like hyper masculine figure. But again, what all of them are doing is very performative. It doesn't actually show that they're masculine at the core. It's like all this acting, all this doing. It's not really so much about who they are as a person, their actual character. And that's the important distinction to make here. Realize that masculinity, it shouldn't have anything to do with what you do or what you have. It shouldn't be you making 6 figures a year. It shouldn't be you being the strongest guy physically in the room. It shouldn't be you being the loudest person. It shouldn't be you having the most trophy wife or the biggest house or the nicest cars or any of that crap. Really, masculinity should be who you are at the core. and how rock solid of a person you are. And even, of course, how comfortable you are in your own skin, enough to have the courage to just be authentic no matter what situation you're in, except maybe at work, because that could lead to you getting fired. But for the most part, you want to be as authentic as possible, even with women, which means, yeah, there will be times where you're going to be nervous, and that's okay. I've been nervous on dates with women because they're so freaking attractive that I'm looking at them like, holy crap, you just look incredible. And I speak to that, like I tell them I'm nervous. I don't try to hide it. And guess what? It actually makes them like you more because it shows that you're real, that you're a human being, that you're vulnerable. You don't want to come off like this caricature of a person where you're being hyper masculine, hoping that it'll make her fall for you. No, you want to be the real version of you and find a woman who will actually like that, like you for who you are. That's what healthy masculinity is all about. You just being yourself and not caring what the world thinks of you. Why should we care what they think about us? They're not us. They're not living in our bodies. They're not living in our minds. They don't have the dreams that we have. So why are you going to let them knock you off your course in life? Stay true to who you are. It also means that you're not going to be able to get manipulated by these oligarchs, by Trumps of the world, the Andrew Tates of the world, who don't want what's best for you. These people are using you. They're grifters. They're trying to extract as much wealth from the world as possible, and they're trying to weaponize young men in that regard. They're manipulating young men. They're not doing it because they actually care about this demographic. They don't give two shites about young men whatsoever. If anything, they'd probably be glad if these young men would die for them in wars. They don't care about you. So make sure you don't believe for a second that they're proper role models of what it means to be masculine. They are not. They're basically just insecure idiots who are very rich and somehow haven't used that money to work on their insecurities in any form, which is mind-boggling to me because that'd be one of the first things I would do. I'd be trying to make my characters rock solid as possible, to be basically unfazed by anything life throws my way, and yet you have them here, literally billionaires, and they're like insecure as hell. It's crazy, but it is what it is. So just make sure that you do not look to insecure guys as role models. That's not who you want to be following. You want to be following men who others actually look up to and trust and admire and respect. Do you think you could trust Trump or Elon Musk or Bezos or Andrew Tate in a business venture? Do you think you'd be able to trust them to not screw you over as soon as they could? That's probably what they would do, right? So healthy masculinity is all about trust, about knowing that this person has your back. It's that whole concept of when men are at war, they're fighting for the guy next to them to make sure that their brother makes it home. That's what healthy masculinity is, that care for other people and them being able to rely on you in times of need. Then you being able to protect them, even the people that you care about. That's healthy masculinity. So hopefully you can see how fragile masculinity only ends up hurting men, because it means that we can't be real to who we are. We can't be honest, authentic human beings. That, at the end of the day, it means we literally can't be human, right? Because fragile masculinity makes it so we can't show our emotions. Like, that's considered bad. If you show emotions in public, there are tons of guys that will probably even comment saying like, you can't show your emotions to women, which is nonsense. You can't show your emotions to some women, but those are the wrong women. You don't want to go after women you can't show your emotions to. You want to go after the women who are actually a step above the rest, who would be able to hold space for your emotions and encourage them, facilitate them. That's what you want, a woman who's supportive of you and who wants you to be freaking human. I mean, think about this. We can't even stop ourselves from having emotions. Like, you can't stop them from arising within you, right? Try doing that. The next time something starts triggering an emotion in you, even if it's happiness, try to stop yourself from feeling that happiness. Good luck. You can't stop emotions from arising within you. All you can do is choose the way that you respond to them. That's where our power lies, in creating a gap between feeling the emotion and acting on it. Remember, there is nothing wrong with this side of the equation, feeling the emotion. There's nothing wrong with that. That's human. You literally can't not feel your emotions. So what you want to focus on controlling is the way you act on them. This is the part where we have our power. Instead of getting angry and yelling at people and throwing stuff or wanting to fight people, instead just take a few deep breaths when you feel angry and try to create space between you and the situation. Then come back to it later once you're calmed down and you can make the best decision, because you won't be letting your emotions guide your decision making. this is what you want to do. That, remember, there's nothing wrong with showing emotion, but there is something wrong with hurting yourself or other people because of your emotions. So allow yourself to feel your feelings. It's human. The more that you suppress them and shove them down, you only hurt yourself, right? All that does is make it so that they just simmer underneath the surface until you get triggered in the future, and then you blow up even more because you have all this pent-up emotion getting released at once. So don't do that. Don't let that happen. Don't repress your emotions. Feel them, but just aim not to act on them in stupid ways. Don't make a fool of yourself. Don't do things you'll regret. Remember, just breathe through your emotions and give yourself space from the situation if you need it. Walk away. Come back later if you can. That's what you want to do. But do not shut yourself off from your emotions. So yeah, I pretty much hate this whole concept of fragile masculinity, but I see the way that it's impacting young men, and it's incredibly unfortunate because, yeah, it makes it so we can't even be ourselves. We can't just be regular human beings who have emotions. We have to hide our emotions. We have to behave in certain ways in order to come off masculine. We care too much about coming off masculine. Who gives a crap, right? Especially in some cases where, like, you're trying to impress people who don't even really care about you. Like, you shouldn't care about them in return, right? Who gives a crap if people like that view you as masculine or not? It doesn't matter. It won't have any impact on your life. So don't do this performative game for them. Just aim not to engage in it. Try to surround yourself with people who give you permission to be human, to be your authentic self. I mean, I can tell you right now, I have incredible friends in my life, both women and men, and I'm allowed to be myself around them. Like, some of my male friends have cried in front of me, even I've cried in front of them. We don't care, because it's a part of being human. It doesn't mean that we're suddenly weak just because, oh my God, water is coming out of my eyes, we're not masculine anymore. Really? Like, really? It's a normal human emotion. You're going to shut yourself off from it just because some guys will see you and judge you for it. Oh, look, water's coming out of his eyes. What a freaking loser. It's a natural thing. He can't even really stop half the time. And, oh, really? Do you see how dumb it actually is when you get down to it? But you want to surround yourself with people like this. People who allow you to just be yourself. Then you're not going to feel that anxiety anymore, and it will also help work on those insecurities surrounding the way your masculinity is perceived by others. I mean, I love the friendships that I have because they're strong, since we're allowed to be ourselves. That makes people bond. Like, it makes friendships incredibly powerful because now we can actually rely on each other. We can actually speak to each other about what we're feeling and, like, the truth of what we're feeling, not these surface level emotions that don't mean anything. Like, you know, the common example when guys break up, or, well, rather often it's more girls breaking up with a guy, and then the guy's all sad or even depressed over it, so his buddies are like, let's go grab some drinks, and then they go drink, but they don't actually talk about what he's feeling. Instead, they're just like, let's get you another woman to hook up with, or let's just drink until we forget. That's not very helpful, right? That's avoiding the emotions. A healthier way of dealing with it would just be saying, hey man, like, how do you feel? Like, your girl broke up with you. That freaking sucks, dude. Are you okay? Like, talk to me. What's up? That's a far better way of dealing with emotions than just sweeping them under the rug and hoping that at some point they're not going to bite you in the rear in the future when they all come bubbling back up to the surface. So there you go. The whole point of this video is that fragile masculinity is hurting us as guys. And there are so many ways we can make sure it doesn't impact us. Just working on being comfortable in our own skins and on surrounding ourselves with people who actually support us and care about us. Not people where we have to perform a certain way in order to be perceived as masculine, in order to gain their respect. Like, I don't care about someone's respect if they need me to be a certain way in order to be masculine in their eyes. Like, I know one thing that a lot of people will look to and immediately say isn't masculine is my hair. I don't give a crap. I like it, man. I want to look like Aragorn from Lord of the Rings. I don't give two shites. So there you go, right? Like, you don't need to perform in certain ways. You don't need to abide by people's ideas of what it means to be masculine. You just don't. Give yourself permission to be yourself. It's a powerful thing. But anyway, you can tell I'm passionate about this subject because it's just, well, it's really unfortunate to see the way that young men are feeling lost and vulnerable, and just watching all these predators, these grifters take advantage of them is not cool in my book. And a lot of them just, they haven't been taught how to avoid this. They haven't been taught that these guys are not good role models for masculinity. Trump does not care about any of his followers. Andrew Tate didn't care about any of his either. They're just looking to enrich themselves. They're not good people to follow. And I know I'll probably get some guys in my comment section defending these people and proving my point, but hey, it is what it is, right? I'm just trying to steer people in the right direction, away from these guys who don't care about them. They're just looking to profit themselves. Like, they literally could not care if all of us died tomorrow. As long as they're the richest and most powerful people in the world, that's all that matters to them. So we shouldn't be praising them, putting them on pedestals. They do not matter in the long run. But I truly hope that this video has been helpful. I truly hope that it's inspired you to not let society get to you, to not feel like you need to engage in this performative masculinity. Like, who are they to define you, right? You should be self-defined. Define yourself for yourself. What do you think masculinity means? How should you best show up in the world? How can you have the best impact if you were to have a future son? How would you want to raise him to ensure that he could avoid the pitfalls of fragile masculinity himself? These are the ways that you should be thinking. What legacy do you want to create? Worry about that. Don't worry about the way people perceive you and whether or not that attractive woman thinks you're masculine enough. It doesn't matter. If you're confident you have the balls to talk to her, you'll find that you really don't need to be super masculine to get attractive women. You really don't. But anyway, this video is getting way too long. Obviously, I could talk about this subject for hours probably because it's something that's really interesting to me, but I'll end it here to not take up any more of your time. I truly hope it was helpful for you. I truly hope it was even entertaining. And definitely let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. I love seeing what you guys have to say about it. And if you enjoyed the video, leave a like on it for the algorithm. That helps me out a lot. And if one-on-one coaching with me is something that interests you, if we want to discuss this topic further and figure out how you can best show up in your own life, feel free to reach out to me on my website link below. I have one-on-one coaching calls available there. Just send me an email and we can discuss how I may best help you. But that's all I have for you guys. Truly hope it was a useful video, and I'll see you in the next one. Arrivederci!